Hi guys, nice to see everyone. We're streaming live on Dr. Anthony Chaffee's YouTube platform and my own today. So thank you all for joining us today. We're just going to be talking about a couple of topics. So the first one is Dr. Anthony Chaffee's amazing news appearance, which was quite entertaining to watch. I really enjoyed that one. It was nice seeing like all the comments below and like the articles and stuff like, oh yeah, carnivore diet rules and that sort of thing. So it's nice to see all these people supporting it. And I actually signed up to, I think it's the Daily Mail, to sort of put my little comment in, my little 2 cents. So yeah, appreciate you
Yeah.
coming on today.
No, you're very welcome, man. It's good to see you again. And
And
yeah,
you.
the 60 minutes thing was great to see everyone, sort of going out. I think they were probably going to be a bit surprised by the amount of people on carnivore who came out and said, "Hey, actually this has really changed my life, and in so many different ways. I've lost all this weight, gained all this health, got off medications. It's not about making money. It's exactly the opposite. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just a matter of educating people on how to eat and what to buy at the grocery store. There's no products involved, and so it's the antithesis of all the other ones that they sort of lumped me in with, which is just trying to sell weird products and things like that. But of course, that's not what it is. And
Mm.
it would have been nice if they had kept in some of the things I said on that, because we did talk about that, and we spoke for like
Yeah.
half an hour on air or on the camera, and then for like hours behind the camera. And so they knew my position. They knew that I thought that this was something that I knew got people off medications, got them to save money, and that I thought that was a major issue with the healthcare crisis. Was the healthcare crisis really was that people were getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and we're getting more and more people dependent on the healthcare system, the sick care system, and medications, and like that's a multi-trillion-dollar a year expense that isn't getting us anywhere. We're spending trillions of dollars buying things that are making us sick, and trillions more dollars fixing that and managing that sickness, and that's a complete waste of resources and also people's life and time. So they're not as productive. They don't have as much time to dedicate towards their career, their family, and curing the actual problems in the world. So I mean, it's in just such a massive waste of human resources, life, talent, and money. And that's what I was saying. I was saying that this is something that we can get away from, and we can actually save trillions of dollars and redirect that towards something more useful. And so, of course, they go like, "Oh yeah, this is just a scam trying to make money." And it's like, kind of miss the whole point
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, I remember speaking off air for quite an extensive period of time last time we chatted, and yeah, I can assure you, Dr. Anthony Chaffee isn't a guy that's trying to make loads of money, and he's not a shill. He's not trying to like steal from you guys. He is promoting good, solid information, and he's getting the right people on to talk about the right topics, which make a difference to people's health outcomes. So yeah, I did find that quite a bizarre sort of from my sort of position, like knowing who you are and how you kind of work. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's not much to sell, is there? Like, what are you gonna sell? Like, I don't know, beef protein powder. There's not a lot of the
Yeah.
market to really promote. So yeah, I get that.
No, and those are all adjuncts. They're not
Mm.
anything that you need. You don't have to have that stuff. It's just something. It's just a product that is meat only. And if you want, something like that, like the carnivore bar, or like a meat only, beef only, whey protein only, and nothing else. Protein powder. Those are those options, which I think is good. Because once you do start entering the commercial market, well, then these big companies have to take you seriously. If there's no commercial benefit for them, then they're just going to like paper over it and try to push their product. So, if they look at that and go, hey, actually, there is a financial, there's something to be gained here financially, then they're going to be more likely to switch gears. Someone is to say, hey, maybe they spot a trend and go like, hey, why don't we beat the curve and get on top of this right away, and help promote it. Then we'll be the big dogs in that space. That would be uh, amazing if they could do that. It sort of happened with keto. There are bigger and bigger companies making more keto products. Unfortunately, a lot of them are highly processed, a bunch of different chemicals and artificial sweeteners and things like that, unfortunately, which are not really much of an improvement. But at least it's something, and at least things are moving in that direction. But at the end of the day, what it's really about is, getting people healthy and having them just eat meat, just eat food. And that's the whole point. You don't need a specific product to do this. You just need to eat meat and just don't eat all these other things. That's it.
Yeah, it's hard to get people away from this, particularly like younger folk, like my sort of age, maybe like this consumerist approach. Like, what supplements do I need to buy? What extra protein powders do I need? What herbal extracts do I need to support myself? All these different things. And honestly, like, when I speak to most people, I say, how would you feel before taking them? How do you feel after taking them? Was there a noteworthy benefit? And oftentimes the answer is no. So I think, save your money, buy some steaks, and have some eggs if you like as well. you know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. That's all you have to do. And I talk to people and they ask about what supplements you need and what this you need, what that you need. Like, you don't need anything. It's like it really is just eat meat, don't eat the other things, and that's it. And it's I like it because it is simple. Some people will say, well, oh, that this sounds really boring. You're only eating the same thing. Like, what animal eats a varied diet? They all eat boring, monotonous diets, and yet they love them. They really enjoy them. They taste great to them because that's what's giving them the nutrients. They're like, this tastes great. I want to eat this. And that's what meat tastes like to us. It's amazing all the time. And then it stops tasting amazing. And yeah, I'm done. I don't need to eat anymore. But when you're hungry, it tastes fantastic. And so, yeah, I've always only wanted to eat steak anyway. That's always been my preference. I've eaten all the other things because I felt I'm obligated to, or I've been forced to by my parents when I was a kid. But if it was up to me, like, I would have only eaten meat when I was a kid. Only. I never wanted to eat anything else. Maybe garlic bread. My mom made some killer garlic bread with a lot of butter and a lot of garlic, and it was just like, that was delicious. But
it's the butter though, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I liked garlic too growing up. Like, now I don't really have a taste for it. Like, if it sort of mixes in, I'm like, nope, don't like it. But just because it covers up the taste of meat, and like, I like the taste of meat. I don't want to cover up the taste of meat. So, but yeah, definitely, the butter definitely helps with that.
Yeah, that's cool stuff. One thing I went to, which maybe about a month ago at this point, was a public health collaboration in Sheffield in the UK. And basically what this was a talk with different featured guests, special guests like yourself, Dr. Sean Baker, lots of like top people in our carnivore kind of space. There was also some people in the vegetarian plant-based community as well. And you delivered a very slam dunk approach, I believe, for the carnivore argument. And what happened was on the Saturday, it was like the main event, which is what I actually stayed for to make sure I watched, because I can't sit down for very long, so I thought I'd time my sort of seating periods, so and it is like a full house, honestly. Dr. Chaffee wasn't in a position where he could sort of see everything that's going on. He basically had a screen in front of him. He could sort of speak to the person that he was debating with through Zoom, because he was unable to make it because of different circumstances. But I just remember seeing Dr. Chaffee's hand raised on Zoom like all the time, like, this guy's got it wrong, this guy's got it wrong, this guy's got and it was like the same thing over and over again. Like, and I was like, so I sat next to my friend Ben Hunt, who you might know, and he sort of ran up to the people at the front, the organizer, and said, Dr. Chaffee's got his hands up there. Make sure you don't, neglect him, because, he's got some good insights here. You did deliver a really good presentation, and I'm glad you did, because you had a limited amount of time, but you really went into depth, and I was quite shocked at the amount of information you could pack into, like, was it 10, 15 minutes? And you still have more to say. So I just remember watching you and Dr. Chidi. Dr. Chidi was a plant-based advocate. And he was like, he's watching you talk, and he's like, yeah. But he didn't have any real rebuttal. Then he mentioned the China study. Then the whole audience went, ooh. So yeah.
I think that's good that people are more aware of the flaws and things like the China study and Eat Lancet and the blue zones and things like that, because it is something that they go to and say, hey, well, look at these studies. This really supports plant-based eating, and on the surface it does. I mean, they certainly made the case for plant-based eating in that, but I mean, there's a lot of problems with them, and there's a lot of just assumptions and guesses. I mean, one of the things that he said that I had sort of meant to bring up, but ended up just not, it sort of felt out of place by the time I had a chance to. He mentioned with the China study, it said, well, what they found is that people in cities had much worse, health outcomes and heart disease and all these sorts of things than people in the country. And the people in the country were very, very healthy. And that's because people in the country were just eating very simple plant-based food, and people in the city were able to afford meat. And it's like, well, true, but they're also able to afford cigarettes and alcohol and junk food and processed garbage and candies and cakes and sweets and all these sorts of things. So, and then someone's like out there and there's pollution, there's all these sorts of different things. Well, some guys out in a rice paddy out in the middle of just God's country and just beautiful area with fresh air, green grass, and, they're walking around barefoot and just loving nature and loving their environment, and hard life, but also hard work, and they're moving their body and they're exercising. And unfortunately, the plants weren't the ones doing that. Unfortunately, they were poor and they couldn't afford meat, and that's what they had to eat as a result was plants. And that's the history of humanity. That's since agriculture was that the people who could afford it got meat, and people who couldn't would eat mostly plants, and they were generally shorter, less healthy, less well developed, died younger. I mean, that's been the story up until the 20th century, that the upper classes were healthier and lived longer than the other classes of people. And there can be a lot of factors involved in there. I think that it was in no small part because they were able to afford meat as well, and they afforded other things too, but they also got access to meat. So I mean, and that's something that we saw, just before and after the agricultural revolution. Right before the agricultural revolution, people were, taller, had larger brains, wide, straight jaws, perfect teeth, no cavities, and no signs of like poor wound healing. Directly after the agricultural revolution, brains are 11% smaller. They're 5 inches shorter. They have evidence of poor wound healing, different sorts of tuberculosis scars and infections like in their spine. Evidence of that. Crooked, broken ass teeth, small jaws, wisdom teeth aren't in. They're all impacted teeth and messed up cavities and missing teeth and all these sorts of things. So that's a stark contrast immediately after we know that we started eating a lot more plants. So that's actually quite compelling evidence to me, maybe not so compelling to other people, but I think if that doesn't at least make you think about it, then you're in a spot of denial, honestly, because that's a very clear contrast. As a population, people were eating a lot of meat, some plants, they were gathering things like that after the megafauna died off after the last ice age. People that didn't have hundreds of millions of buffalo to hunt like the Native Americans, they had to go to other means. So maybe they had livestock, maybe they had other sorts of things, but they also moved to plants and agriculture. And in those populations, they did worse, and so they maybe had some animals and hunter gatherers and this and the other, but then they moved into more farming and eating a lot more plants, and their health suffered as a result of it. And they weren't even necessarily exclusive carnivores after that. In fact, those populations were like on average 5'9", and they dropped down to like 5'4". But the Native Americans in the 1800s, as far as the 1800s, when they were still eating buffalo, these guys were like on average 6'4", 6'5". I mean, most of these guys were pushing 7 feet tall. They were huge, absolute monsters. And there was a study that showed that the Plains Indians in the 1800s that were only eating buffalo, maybe they had some other things sometimes, but the vast majority of what they ate was meat, and buffalo predominantly. They were the tallest human beings on Earth, right? The average height of a population equals the average health of the population. The average Chinese adult male is 5'6". Average adult male in America is 5'8", right about pre-agriculture when we were hunter-gatherers, right? So Still not all that great. Then we moved to more agriculture, eating less meat, not even processed plants, just more plants, not as much meat. On average, 5'4", right? Big drop. So it makes a big difference when you reduce the amount of meat that you're eating and increase the amount of plants you're eating. It's just not as healthy. It's, and that's what the only real hard evidence looks at and finds. And there's numerous holes in the China study, especially the China study, but also the Eat Lancet study. I mean, that was just garbage. So one of the top, well, really the top epidemiologist and doctor and medical researcher in the world is, and probably ever, is Professor John Ioannidis from Stanford. He had, everything goes by citations and how many people cite your work, and that's how relevant it is, right? And so he is one of the top 10 most cited people in any discipline of all time. Okay, so. And he's still like halfway through his career, right? So he's still like, this guy's got decades ahead of him, and so, and I mean, he's just really one of the most prolific and and successful research scientists in history. And he looked at the Eat Lancet study, and he and published something saying that the Eat Lancet study is more science fiction than science. Right? This is all crap. This is just all crap. The blue zones, that's another one. They say that, oh, well, these blue zones, these people have a lot of centenarians, people that live over 100, and they're all plant-based. No, they're not. No, they're damn well not. That's an assertion that they make, but it's false. I was just talking to Dr. Bill Schindler, who was a retired professor of anthropology and paleoanthropology at University of Maryland. He was just in Sardinia. And he was in the epicenter of the first recognized blue zone in the world. And he said that these people not only eat a meat-based diet, it's like a whole animal approach. It's just all like they just cook whole sheep and like a whole big chunk of cow, just on a spit. And they just cook this whole thing. They sit down, they have the whole family and the whole community come in, they all eat together. And it's like raw cheeses, raw milk, and just a bunch of meat. And and they had plants, but as like a garnish, as seasonings, and like that's it. They ate meat. That's what they ate, and they were extraordinarily healthy. They would have like wine and things like that, with their meals and everything. But it was like what they ate was predominantly meat. It was not plants. It's not plant-based. That's an absolute lie. The only population in the blue zones that were plant-based is Loma Linda. And that's because they're Seventh-day Adventists who are religiously anti-meat because their prophetess in the 1800s, this is all true, I swear to God, people can look this up. Their prophetess in the 1800s had said she had a vision from God that said that meat makes you feel lustful, makes you horny, and lust is a sin, and therefore don't eat meat. So meat is sinful, don't eat it. And so they based this entire religion around not eating meat. And so they started the field of nutritional sciences. They have Loma Linda Medical Center, which is a medical school run by and for Seventh-day Adventists. I remember looking at this. It's in California. I remember looking at this when I was applying to medical schools and just looking at it, and it just said flat out, you cannot apply here unless you're in the Seventh-day Adventist church and you need a letter from your deacon or whatever saying that you're part of the church. And I thought that was interesting. So that's who they are. And they started the field of nutritional sciences in 1917. They wrote the first textbook on nutrition, university level education nutrition in 1925. Still in print. It's the most recent edition is still being used in colleges, and they are hugely successful. Kellogg's cereals, that's Harvey Kellogg was a Seventh-day Adventist, and so they own, they are fabulously wealthy. They're one of these. They seem to be one of these people behind the curtain, that are pulling the strings, and they don't need to be out there in the forefront, like you and I saying like, hey, this is wrong. They're in behind, and they're orchestrating all these things. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, pulling the strings of industry and media to get what they want and to influence people in the way that they want to push their product, but most importantly, to push their agenda. And so, you look at that and you start to realize why nutritional research and nutritional studies are just complete and utter garbage. It's because it's being manipulated. Coca-Cola alone spends 11 times the amount of money on nutritional research than the NIH, and Kellogg's does similar. So does Pepsi and Nestle and all these companies. They just put out drums of nutritional research that is just garbage. And so that's what people, well, this study said that, seed oils are great. I'm like, I just couldn't care less. I could not care less what the Kellogg's, what the makers of canola oil think about canola oil. I just don't give a shit, And so you look at the Loma Linda, of course, they're plant-based. They're the only ones in the blue zones who are plant-based, right? But it's not because they're plant-based that they're living longer, because you look at Mormons, they don't have these same dietary restrictions, right? But what they do have restrictions on? They don't smoke, they don't drink, they don't do drugs, they don't take stimulants. Most of them don't even drink coffee or caffeine or anything like that, and so on. They have the exact same average life expectancy as the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, right? They don't have the same dietary restrictions. So that's nonsense, And one thing that the people in Loma Linda are doing as well is not smoking, drinking, doing drugs. They're also not eating a bunch of processed garbage unless they're eating those Impossible burgers, which I don't know why you would, except, because they probably have a hand in making them or funding them. So they probably know exactly how toxic those things are. So, it's nice that, you get the whole crowd going, groaning when he brings up the China study, as just an aside, just as someone who was phoning in as well, we couldn't hear the audience at all. So I didn't hear people, respond, with jeers and boos when
honestly,
yeah,
it was very much in your favor. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so that's interesting. But yeah, I don't think he would have heard that. So I think he went, well, no, China study and so great or whatever. Like if he was there in person and he said the China study, he might have been a bit, put off by that. I don't see how you couldn't be, by the crowd turning on you like that. But it is good that people are starting to understand that and understand that, when people bring these things up, it's like that's not a compelling argument.
Yeah, one thing that was flagged up to me at that point was everyone there for the most part was someone that's like a nutritionist, dietitian, healthcare professional, some sort of doctor, researcher, scientist. And a very vast majority of people were in agreement with the carnivore diet. So it's not the scientific community, the health-based practice, these sort of people aren't going towards plant-based. It's not the consensus. And I think what would have been a really good point at the start, if either you or Dr. Baker said it, obviously going back in time, you can't, it's hindsight, isn't it? But you might have said, what is the hierarchy of evidence in your mind? Then they would have said, clinical trial, mechanisms, epidemiology, whatever. Then you'd have pointed at that epidemiology and just said, that's an absolute waste of time. It doesn't tell you anything. So it's very bizarre looking at that. Just out of interest, did you have any kind of talks behind the scenes with any of the plant-based folk, like after the fact at all, or was it just as it was?
Not from the conference. No, didn't really talk to any of those. Chitty and I just sort of chatted, exchanged niceties, beforehand, and and that was it, and just sort of were pleasant to each other. He seems like a very nice guy. And I, and the thing is I have absolutely no doubt that he really means well, and really does want the best, for his patients, and is really trying to come through, from an evidence-based perspective. He absolutely comes across like that. I don't think he's one of these paid shills. He definitely does not give the impression to me of that. He does seem, quite earnest in his approach. And so, you can have a conversation with those people, because you all want the best for your patients. You all want to find out what's the right thing, and that's what he thinks is the right thing. This is what I think is the right thing, and we can discuss it. And that's really, really okay. It's when you get, the problem comes when you have these people that are just ideologically driven. It's just like, no, this is the only way, or the planet's going to die and you're evil, and blah 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 blah. I mean, like, you can't have a rational conversation with people who are irrational, or the ones that are just, they are being driven by different motivations besides actually trying to help people. You have to have that common ground of actually being earnest, and caring about what happens to people and what happens to the world, and just understanding that, like, there are right and wrong ways of doing things, and let's try to figure out what the right way is for everyone to benefit. So if you're talking to someone who's not really working on those with those tools, then there's probably just no point really talking to them, except for showing what how dishonest and incorrect they are, so that other people can see that and go like, maybe I won't listen to what this guy says.
Yeah, completely. It's funny about the debate because I actually asked to be on a panel of people to talk about different health practices, nutrition practices, in my local area. So my partner Sophie's auntie was running this wellbeing festival. She's plant-based. It's a predominantly sort of vegan, plant-based community that would go to it. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something in the fashion of Dr. Chaffee here, and I'm going to do a plants are trying to kill you sort of presentation.
Nice.
Honestly, I swear to God, and I'll get to this point a bit later, but what happened was we had a dry run. So basically, as we're chatting now, just off air, kind of not in front of anyone, a chat. So I presented my argument and said, I know you guys are of a different mind to me. It's completely fine. I've been asked to make a presentation based on health outcomes, my own experience, and what I know, what the science does or does not say. And I basically explained to them all the things that you kind of said in a roundabout way. Not everything in that much detail, but I had about 10 minutes. So I just picked all the obvious things, basically. Species-specific diet, all that sort of stuff. And so we're good to go for the festival, the panel, the talk in about, I don't know, it'll be about 2-3 weeks from now. And two of the panelists out of, I think there's 4 of us in total, went to the organizer and said, I don't feel comfortable with him being on the panel.
Oh, Jesus.
And basically, I said to them, I appreciate you've got a different viewpoint to me, so I'm not trying to like force my opinion on you, but I'm going to present the facts as I see them, and then you can make your own decision up. I provide a very balanced argument. I said, there is a toxicity to different plants. The lower sugar ones, the lower fiber ones are going to be probably less detrimental for the most part. So it wasn't like I was just saying, just eat one thing, because I was going from over here, And basically, yeah, the promoter, unfortunately, she had a handful. So it's either she upsets me, who's almost like a distant family member, or she upsets 2 of them, and they won't come to a talk again. And I sort of said, you know what, I'll just sit out. So what I ended up doing was I made a post about it. I think a YouTube video. Got quite a few views on that one. Like carnivore kicked out of health talk, that sort of thing. Then I actually presented my presentation as I would, good. Kind of like how you did. So it's not nearly as good as yours, of course, but it was a 20-minute long video. It's got a similar sort of type, like the demonization of plant foods or something, or animal foods, something like that. Also put special mentions, Dr. Baker, everyone like that. And yeah, it's quite a popular video. So it's funny looking back and just realizing there's always going to be pushback against you based on, like you said, ideology. People don't want to be told they're wrong. And funny enough, they were promoting like plant extracts and vegan supplements, I imagine, and vegetables and stuff. So it just goes to show I wasn't trying to sell anything, guys. I was just trying to give some information out. And of course, I run a nutrition consultancy, and it would be helpful for me to promote that. But the chance of me getting a lead from that would be so slim in a vegan sort of, festival. So it's just funny to see. But I'm glad you had that platform, and I hope that these discussions between yourself and people that are plant-based advocates can continue.
Well, it is a shame that they didn't let you speak, because obviously you have to have those conversations. And if you can't be challenged and you can't, go up and have a conversation with people, then how much do you actually believe in your side? And I think that's the problem. They probably don't believe all that much, because it was never in question for thousands of years that meat was the most important thing that we could eat, and that humans were carnivores, and insofar as we were known to be apex predators. Apex predators are carnivores. That's just like a definition in terms. If you're an apex predator, you're hunting things, you're eating other animals, and in fact, you're the most dominant, hunter. You're just the most dominant species. So, apex predators are really definitionally carnivores, and we've known that humans have been carnivores forever, and that's what we taught in school, probably up until now. God knows what they're teaching kids in school. Who knows? It's all insane at the moment. But when vegans were sort of pushing this, in the 80s, it was just, well, fat makes you fat, don't eat it. So people wanted to go plant-based. Oh, plants don't make you fat. Plants don't have saturated fat. They don't have cholesterol. Oh, okay, so that's better for you. And and you can just eat as much plants as you want. You won't get fat because there's no nutrition in it. There's no calories. There's no fat. And so there you go. You're not going to be getting fat if you just don't eat fat. Obviously, that was wrong. The obesity rate exploded after that, and people got a whole lot worse. And but people were still saying, like, yeah, we were hunter gatherers, all clear signs, and we had mammoth drops going back over 1 million years, buffalo drops, Native Americans, all primal tribes. They were just all hunters. They were all just just hunting and eating animals, and still going on to this day. But now they're starting to argue, say, well, no, actually, not only is it like an ethical thing and all that sort of stuff, but no, we're actually herbivores. I mean, that's just what we evolved on. This is our biologically appropriate diet, is carrot sticks. And then it's just, it's just like, oh my God, no. And so, if you truly believe that, then you should be able to defend it. If you really know your stuff and you're like, no, this is definitely it, you should be willing to talk about to anybody about it, and just be like, well, no, this is the evidence. This is what it shows. And you both present your evidence, and maybe you don't convince each other, but you give the audience something to think about. And if they're not even willing to do that, if they're so threatened by alternate thoughts, then they can't believe what they're saying all that much.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we've covered all this really now. Yeah, it's nice to go over that anyway, just to recap it really. I know you've done it already, but it's great. I don't know if you wanted to do some questions in the live chat at all. There's quite a few here, but
yeah, you can do that. I actually just saw one that caught my eye. It's from a person that goes by John Boy. It says, Dr. Chaffee, I'm 6 months in, I'm presuming carnivore, and I don't think I'm fat adapted. I still have liquid, I'm assuming stools, and have not had a solid movement since I started. So just to address that, that's a common thing that people come up with. Sort of need to know a little bit more about that, though, because most of the time people are still eating things that aren't 100% carnivore and can influence their bowels. Coffee and tea are both laxatives, right? Artificial sweeteners are laxatives, and so sometimes people have coffee and tea and put artificial sweeteners in it, and then they are confused as to why they're having massive running stools. So that's a major one. And when you cut out fiber from your diet, then you're just pushing liquid around instead of this big clog of 2x4 that's having to pass through your colon. And so that's the thing. So if you're eating anything else besides just meat and water, get rid of it. And see how you go. It's not about being fat adapted. That's not fat adapted. Fat adaptation is that you're able to run on your body's own fat and make ketones, blood sugar, and liver glycogen. So that's already happened, because if you're not eating carbohydrates, you're still alive. Then you're fat adapted, right? Because you're making the energy. You haven't dropped dead from a lack of that. So. Which is never going to happen. Like, your body's not going to do that. So you are fat adapted. That's not a problem. Having runny stools is not about being fat adapted. That's either from having something that's a laxative, or from eating a lot more fat than your body can absorb. and then it just goes out because you don't absorb it. Your body doesn't want to absorb every ounce of fat that you eat. It wants to absorb the amount of fat that it wants for its needs, and then it doesn't want the rest, right? So you have, bile, and it's really hard for your body to absorb fat without bile. And so when you run out of bile, fat goes out. A little bit will be absorbed, not much. And
Yeah.
so that can be liquid. Now, the other thing is that if you are just eating meat and just eating fat, and you're sort of pulling back on the fat and pulling back on the fat, that usually works for most people. But then there are some people that just for whatever reason just find that they have a difficult time with more liquid fat, like rendered fat, like beef drippings or tallow or something like that. And that just seems to go through them very quick. And the solution for them is to eat solid fat, cellular fat that's in the tissue. And then you chew that up, you swallow it, and it takes a longer for your body to break down that cellular structure and get at the fat. And so it's just sort of like a time delay medication, a slow release medication that just weeps out a little bit at a time, and then your body can absorb that and trap it down better. And some people actually would eat the fat uncooked and then cook the steak up and eat that afterwards. And they find that, and the people that have had those issues with just, they really can't figure out what's going on with loose stools, and have done all the different things that I recommended there, they find that works. So I haven't seen anyone that has not resolved their issues going down that stepwise progression.
Yeah, I think the same. There's lots of things we can do to sort of help our absorption. I got to a point where I like to try everything that they put out, the other influencers and things like the high fat, 80-20, all these things. Well, I can't speak on it unless I try it, I can't just work on other anecdotes. It's not always the best indicator of what's good and what's not. Basically, me, obviously, I'm quite a heavy chap. I, need a lot of energy. I was eating, I think, up to 380 grams of fat per day on a high fat approach, and my protein was something like 180 grams. So you guys can imagine how much butter that is, basically. My body did not adjust to it very well. It took about 2 weeks, but after that point, it's fine. But bear in mind, guys, I'm quite young. So for someone else, you might just add 10 grams per day or every few days. So you just up it that way. I find a lot of people overdo the protein, I think, as well. But you just got to find your satiety spot. I think people have a protein and a fat kind of grammage that they need. And oftentimes they come from a background where, like my mum, for example, she's not carnivore, but she's more animal-based now. She could not do a high-fat approach. She's been on a low-fat diet for the most of her life. She'd have to really transition to it. So that's kind of how I'm going about it. And like you said, the raw, unrendered beef fat works well. We had a question actually about meal timing and meal volume, which I'm going to chuck up.
Sure.
So, guessing Primal Mike said, I ate 2 pounds of steak for dinner, swimming in ghee, and I still feel like I could eat more when I'm done. Should I cook more or add one more meal during the day?
No, just keep eating. Yeah. If your body's telling you, keep eating, then I would keep eating, especially in your evening meal. Sometimes during the day, if you are eating a big meal, you'll just get naturally lethargic. You're, directing a lot of blood and resources to your digestive tract to digest and absorb this food. That blood is not available for your brain and your muscles. So you're going to be a bit more tired, and you're going to be a bit more lethargic, and your body's going to want, hey, rest, take it easy, rest and digest. So yes, definitely. I try to cook more meat than I think I'm going to want to eat. And I eat until I get to a point where I go, I'm not really interested in eating anymore. I don't really want to eat anymore. This doesn't really taste good anymore. Or I'm not enjoying it anymore. I don't get to the point where it's just like, this is gross, I want to stop. Some people do that. I don't think that's the right approach. I think you just eat what's enjoyable. You should always enjoy it. I don't think we should start giving ourselves, that sort of negative relationship with food. It should always be positive. But if it is positive, keep it coming, right? If you're eating the right thing, right? If you're eating sugar, it's a stimulant, it's a drug, it's addictive. Of course, it's going to give you a positive feedback. All drugs give you positive feedback. And the difference between drugs and something good for you that gives positive feedback is that if it's good for you, that positive feedback will wane, and eventually it will go away, and you won't get any positive feedback. And if you keep doing it, you'll get negative feedback, and it'll actually be hard to do. And I've seen people do that just because they say, well, this is how much I cook. This is how much I normally eat. That's how much I need to eat. And they just force themselves to do it. So you don't need to do that. But what you should do is you should keep eating. If you're hungry at the end of that, or if you're still like, man, good to the last bite, cook another one. And sometimes you need to cook. Sometimes you'll find that you'll get to a point where you just ate as much as you wanted, and and that's and then you're still hungry another time during the day. And when I'm working out heavily, you might notice this as well, that I can't get everything I need in one sitting. I need to eat twice a day to get all the nutrients I want, what my body wants when I'm really working out a lot. So that could be a thing too. But I think you always maximize mealtime, especially in the later meal, and you might even have to eat more than once during the day, but you at least eat to capacity once.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Yeah, it definitely gets rid of some of the electrolyte issues that people seem to have. Like I know a lot of people I speak to, especially like maybe middle-aged women, they're more like the 4 or 5 meals per day, maybe no functioning or gallbladder. They're splitting up their meals into tiny little amounts, and they're like getting palpitations, they're getting cramping, all these sort of things. So this brings me to a next question actually, which I thought was quite a good one. Hey, Dr. Chaffee, you said in your videos that meat has everything we need as humans, but I hear from many carnivore sources I should supplement electrolytes. What is the truth now? I'm confused.
Oh yeah, no, you don't need supplements. No, if you're eating your biologically appropriate diet, you don't need to take supplements. If you need to take supplements, then by definition your diet is deficient, right? Now, there is a difference between a wild moose or a buffalo and a grain feedlot cow. There just is. Most people actually do just fine on the feedlot cow, but some people will maybe need to add in a bit of liver or something like that, which is much more nutrient dense. If you look at the nutrient density profile of regeneratively raised, grass-fed and finished beef, it's depending on the farm you look at, it was anywhere from 4 to 5 times the amount of nutrients, micronutrients, right? So like the vitamins and minerals and things like that. So we know that there are more nutrients there, but the vast majority of people will do just fine with just store-bought meat that's finished up in a grain lot. Then for those that's not quite enough, add in a bit of liver. It doesn't need to be much, just a bit every week, or every few days or something like that, and you should be fine. And then if you are you're going to do better. But if like a few months down the road you check all your blood work and you're like, oh, actually you're deficient in something. Now, first of all, most people are coming from a state of deficiency, so it can take months and months and months and months and months to drag your way out of deficiency. And so check it now, then check it in a few months and see what the trend is. But if you are just consistently low, like, wow, this isn't really picking up, it's just a bit low on whatever, and liver's not doing it, adding a bit more liver isn't covering that, or a bit of heart or a bit of other organs aren't covering that, you can take a supplement at that point. The amount of people that I see that need to do that are few and far between. I mean, it's like I've never really had to suggest someone start taking supplements, a year on in someone who's on carnivore ever. And everyone who I've tested, whose blood tests I've checked, have all been just completely optimal. And and they didn't start that way. They started out pretty deficiently. But if you're coming from a point of a nutritional deficiency, just add in a bit more liver. That's usually more than enough. That will catch you up. And then after a few months, you probably don't need to eat as much. You don't want to eat too much liver, because it can lead to hypervitaminosis. You can get too much of a good thing, especially with the fat soluble vitamins. Can just be a bit much, and your system can get overloaded.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of electrolytes either. I think the only, outside of an obvious deficiency for some reason, maybe someone that's transitioning to like a keto diet, maybe it might be useful. But it's not a long-term fix. There's something that your body has to upregulate itself with. I find I mean, I don't really know anyone that I work with that takes electrolytes, at least that I know of. So yeah.
Well, and sorry, I didn't really sort of address that specifically, but yeah, I mean, when people need electrolytes, it's, first of all, few and far between, But
Yeah.
the theoretical time is going to be early on when your insulin is lowering and getting to a more normal level. Once it's at a normal level and your body's sort of gone to a state of homeostasis, you're really not going to need these things. And so it's something that we should think about in those first few weeks or month at most, and then really not to worry about too much. Most people will say like, well, I'm having electrolyte problems. I feel like I'm having low electrolytes. It's like, okay, what does that mean to you? And oftentimes we'll say, well, I just sort of feel a bit off, and that's electrolytes. I'm like, well, it could be, but it may not be. I mean, electrolyte deficiencies get very, very specific things, like, low sodium makes people very confused. They get seizures, they go into a coma, and then they die. It's very specific. Low potassium, you get heart arrhythmias, and you get atrial fibrillation. You get this massively fast racing beat that is just all over the place. It's very irregular. And then you have a heart attack or cardiac arrest, and you die. So it's like, this is not like, a small thing like, oh, I just kind of feel a little off. Maybe, but it's usually much more pronounced than that when you actually have a deficiency. And then, you can get cramping with magnesium. I don't really see too much cramp. I've never seen anyone with clinically diagnosed low potassium or sodium in the hospital. You have to be very sick to get those things out of whack, because it makes you very sick, and your body really tightly regulates that. I've never seen someone in the hospital with low potassium or sodium who's getting cramps. Never in my life, not once. And so, magnesium, yes. When people get cramps in the hospital, we check their magnesium. But more often than not, it's dehydration. And so more often than not, people are saying, oh, I'm having electrolyte issues, I'm getting these cramps, and they're like, I'm taking all these electrolytes, it's just still not working. Should I take more? What should I do? I was like, well, if you're taking electrolytes and it's not helping, it's clearly not the electrolytes, is it? Could be, but if you take electrolytes and it's not helping, then it's not the electrolytes. You have to think of something else, go down the list. And I think hydration is probably the main thing that people neglect.
Yeah, I find myself hydration or need for it seems to go up if I steer any way away from the carnivore diet, which it corresponds with your ideas about the insulin. It definitely seems to make sense. More insulin in your blood, more sodium probably needed, more water, all that sort of thing. We've got some super chats, which I'm going to chuck on the screen now.
Yeah.
So after a lifetime of toxic exposures, do you think carnivore being an elimination diet can trigger some major Herxheimer or detox reactions as your body is clearing out all the garbage?
That's a very good question. It depends on if your body is sequestering these toxins in different tissues. Some of these things are fat soluble, and so it's thought that they can store in your excess adipose tissue, and then if you start losing weight, it'll start releasing this out at that point. That's certainly a theoretical. I don't know how real that is. I've only heard people speak about it in the abstract, that's something that could be a problem. I've never actually seen anyone present evidence saying, hey, here's a study that shows when you start losing weight, the dioxin levels in their blood goes up. I've never seen anyone present that. I haven't gone looking for it either. I haven't looked and scoured the literature for that. But every time I've heard someone talk about it, I've never heard them reference a study. It's always a theoretical, like this could happen. So it could happen. Is it better to perpetuate, that body fat and all the things that come with it, like metabolic disease and diabetes and cancer and heart disease and all those sorts of things? Probably not. And so, I still think that going on a carnivore diet and eating the appropriate diet is going to be the best thing. I mean, you don't just lose massive amounts of weight, just overnight. I mean, it does take time, and so you're going to be, getting these things out. But yeah, I mean, if people are losing weight and these are expelling out these different toxins and things like that, that's something to keep in mind. If all of a sudden you're like, I'm actually not feeling great, I'm sort of feeling worse. There's a sort of a question in there. Someone's saying that, what about carnivores? They've been a carnivore for like a year and a half, and all of a sudden they start getting joint pain and this, that, and the other. First of all, really, I've never seen that. Like maybe like one or two people have heard about that, and generally that's thought to be like oxalate, dumping or something like that. That is this delayed response, and especially in carnivore. I spoke to Sally Norton, and she said that Carnivores can get quite a delayed response to that because there's not much calcium, with people that don't do dairy, if they're just doing meat and water. And she said that lack of high volume calcium actually seems to not strip out all the oxalates. So we sort of don't get that same response, but it can happen down the track. And then all of a sudden you start increasing the amount of calcium you eat, and all of a sudden it starts stripping out of the oxalate out of your body, and you start getting more issues. And one of the classic signs of oxalate toxicity or oxalate dumping is joint pain, that sort of thing, and causing like pseudo gout sort of thing. Yeah. It's one of 5 causes of gout, basically. Uric acid crystals being one of them. Now they call them gout and pseudo gout, but oxalic acid is one of the oxalates are one of the pseudo gout things. So that could be, but I mean, the amount of people that I've seen have problems years down the track is just, I mean, maybe one, like maybe one, and it's sorted out. So some people are just having, just other issues that just sort of, they're like, okay, well, maybe this is carnivore, and it turns out it's not, and it's fine. But it depends on the toxic exposures, depending if those are fat soluble, depending on where they're built up. And so, but that's a theoretical, is that you can have these toxins sort of sitting in your fat tissue. And if you lose weight very quickly, it could, increase that to a point that your body has a difficult time contending with it. There's a potential for that. So just be mindful of that. And, and if you think there's a problem, you can talk to your doctor and say, hey, I think I might have some toxicity in my blood from these different exposures. Can we run some tests and see what's going on? May not be possible to test for all things, but anytime you're feeling pretty rotten, it's important to get your doctor involved, especially if you're thinking that you have these sorts of toxic exposures.
Yeah, doctors are useful for getting some tests, guys. So don't think people like us are just saying don't speak to your doctor, they don't know anything. They do have their uses, and they're not all the same, evidently. So.
Yeah.
Excellent. We've got a couple more super chats. We've got one from my friend Tom. Could you interview Harry Sopanos, please? Have you heard of Harry Sopanos, Dr. Chaffee?
No, I don't think so.
Why not?
No, I don't know. Well, the name sounds familiar. Who is that?
He's a good friend of Bart Kay and a friend of myself. He's very knowledgeable, and he cured himself of severe heart issues quite a few years ago. And his whole thing is obviously the carnivore diet, ancestral health, all the life hacks, all the biohacks. He's very no nonsense. He really reads into the mechanisms, reads into the proper studies that I have. He actually posted something in the chat. I can't find it now, but it is about the gallbladder and sludge and things like that, I think. And he's very insightful. He's one of the people you do need to get in your channel.
Okay.
I highly recommend interviewing him if you have the opportunity to. So
I'll write a note now.
Yeah.
And and so does he sort of have a channel or YouTube plays, or is he a doctor, a researcher, or does he just sort of do it on his own, or how do people know about him?
Sure. So he's basically a citizen scientist. He's a civilian. He's not a doctor or anything, but he does have a YouTube channel which is just Harry Sopanos.
Okay.
And that's literally it. And he donates like 8 hours of his time every other week, basically, for live Q&As. So he does like a 4 or 5 hour stint. And he answers everyone's questions.
Yeah. Oh, very cool.
He doesn't ask for anything either. He's very insightful guy. You'd like him a lot, honestly. When you speak to him, just make sure you got like 3 hours booked.
Yeah, right.
Like a question, he really goes into the weeds. So honestly, very useful.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I mean, man after my own heart. I mean, I sort of feel bad sometimes because people say, "Oh, yeah, this is going to be like a 45-minute interview." In my head, I'm like, "No, it's not." Makes sense. Because I think it's important to get into the weeds and to get into details like that. So that's great. Yeah, no, I'll check him out.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've got 405 people live in the chat right now, apparently.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, apologies if we've not got to everyone's questions. I'm addressing the super chats just because it's the way people tend to do things. So vegetable oil has a half-life of 680 days. Is there a way to get it out more rapidly? Probably not eat it, I think, yes.
Yeah. I think that's probably the way to go. Half-lives are half-lives. It's hard to sort of get around that. I don't know is a short answer. I don't know if there's any way that could speed that up. As far it might be that the more healthy you are, maybe the quicker your body can clear these things out. But half life, I sort of wonder where that number is coming from. That sort of how long the half life is in your body. These oils get used in different ways in our bodies, and the molecules that mimic cholesterol, for example, get used up in ways in cell membranes and things like that, which is where cholesterol is supposed to go, and gets used in different things that cholesterol is supposed to be used for, and it really messes it up, and your blood cells actually become more brittle, and they die much quicker. They don't last as long, and all these sorts of things. So it's is that 680 days? Is that the half life in your body before your body sort of works these little bastards out? I don't know. And anytime they test that sort of thing, it's going to be in the context of a standard American diet. So is that 680 days for carnivores? If you're just giving yourself an abundance of actual healthy animal cholesterol and fat, will that replace this crappy stuff that your body doesn't want? Your body seems to be able to recognize this stuff and not like it. Macrophages, they make these foam cells. They suck up cholesterol and things like that. They actually really like the cholesterol. They don't like to give it up, but they will spit out the plant cholesterols, the plant sterols really quick. They just don't like this stuff. They just spit it out. And in fact, there was a study looking at autopsies of people that had big arterial plaques in their aorta and other sorts of areas. And they found there was actually, it wasn't animal cholesterol that was in the plaques. It was actually the plant sterols that were in the plaques, right? So that's something to think about as well, that just, there's this part of this disease process that these things are involved in as well. And that your body doesn't like them. And it's trying to just sort of shove them in areas and just, get rid of this crap and keep it away from it. So, I would hope that being on a carnivore diet and having a big abundance of fat and animal cholesterols, your body is going to get rid of the less desirable plant sterols and oils and replace it with the good stuff. But I don't know for sure. I can't think of any study that I've seen that would say one way or the other. But I'm at least in this for the long run. I'm not just doing this for a year to try to get better health, and then I'll just go back to eating like crap, and then just come back to it whenever I'm just feeling down in the dumps. I've been doing this far longer than 680 days. So that to me, I'm really happy with that 680 days, because I'm way past that. There's none of that crap in my body anymore. If that's the thing, if you're going by like 5 half-lives, to get none of this stuff out of there, then maybe I have a bit to go, but the majority of it, it's going to be out for me. And I never used vegetable oils much at all, so I don't think I had much of that in me. But I think it's just the main thing is that it takes as long as it takes. I don't think there's any good way of figuring out how long that's actually going to be, especially in people that are doing a carnivore diet. And so just realize that the best thing you can do is just not add any more in your body, and it will eventually go away. And that's good news, because you're just going to keep feeling better and better. It's not the end of the road on feeling better. You feel so much better, like 1,000 times better in 2 weeks. Your body starts working in ways it never did before. After 6 months to a year, you're just a whole new person, and you just feel amazing. And now look, you're just going to keep getting better and better and better, because you've got more things for your body to work through. So just look at it as a positive. You haven't got all your Christmas presents at one time. So something to look forward to.
Yeah, but by denomination, I think if people follow this for like 5 years, they'll feel substantially better. Obviously, I think the most initial thing to me that I see with people is their digestion improves a lot, so they're not sort of having like a tummy rumbling, like acidic kind of feeling. What do they call it? GERD and stuff like that. I seem to notice that gets put into remission quite quickly.
Yeah.
We've got a question from Carsten Bornman. Basically, he's asking about beef and if everything is contained within beef that we need for mitochondrial health. I'm guessing he's talking about like maybe CoQ10 and cofactors, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, well, no, everything. Yeah, everything you need is in beef in the proportions that you need it. So yeah, no, and the big thing with mitochondrial health is not adding in things that harm them. And there are, I talk about my professor of cancer biology who talked about all the different carcinogens that are in plants. I was talking to Professor Thomas Seyfried, who's professor of cancer biology at Boston College, and I sort of mentioned that, my experience with that and why I stopped eating plants in the first place, and I mentioned the carcinogens, and he sort of said, and he said to me, he's like, and you know what all of those plant carcinogens do? They all damage the mitochondria. So, that's the main thing with mitochondrial health, is just staying the hell out of its way and just letting your body get on with it. A major part of this is just not eating carbohydrates, which raise your insulin, which shut down your body's ability to go through autophagy and mitophagy and replace these old decrepit cells and these old decrepit mitochondria, and recycle them into new healthy cells and mitochondria so that they work better and trigger mitogenesis, and the creation of more mitochondria, more younger, more youthful, healthy mitochondria, which makes you younger and more healthy. And you can literally age backwards. And this is why you see people going on a carnivore diet after months or a year or whatever. I mean, they look like 10 years younger. I look 10 years younger than I did when I started this at 38. Well, I guess that's a matter of opinion if I look 28 to people, but I definitely look younger than I did then, and I look younger than I did then, right? I don't think I looked 38 at 38 anyway, but I certainly look a lot younger now than I did then, and I feel much better. I feel like I did in my early 20s when I was playing rugby and doing carnivore, and that was the only time in my life that I've ever felt this good. And so that's the main thing. Yes, you have absolutely everything you need in beef in the proportions that you need it. If you want to add in some heart and some kidney and liver and things like that, sometimes go for it. And those are going to be very good for you. But do remember that these things come in proportions, right? You have an entire cow or buffalo. You're going to eat that thing. It's going to take you 2 years to finish all the meat on that cow. It has one heart. It has one liver. It has 2 kidneys, right? So, and a lot of intestinal tract. So, that may last you a while. You'll be in chitlins for a while, but it's something that you should keep in mind as far as that proportionality is concerned. Eating 500 grams of liver and heart every day just doesn't make sense, because that's not the proportions that you would ever find that in the animal. And there are people like the Inuit who don't eat any organs at all, because the organs of predatory sea mammals are very, very, very nutrient dense to the point of being toxic. And so you can't eat polar bear liver at all. It will kill you with the amount of vitamin A it has. So, and you eat enough seal liver as well, that'll kill you from the vitamin A too. So just keep that in mind. But yes, you have everything you need in beef. And then if you're only eating beef, that's the main thing, because you're going to eliminate all the things that are harming your mitochondria.
Yeah, very well said. This came up and it made me quite amused. More muscle here than every vegan YouTuber influencer combined.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much of a task that is, but we need Dr. Baker on now. Then we're set, I think.
Yeah, that guy's huge, man. Have you met him? You were at PhD.
Yeah, I met him. Yeah, he's like me but taller.
Yeah.
You've met him, of course, haven't you?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, he's 6'5". I'm 6'3". It's only sort of a 2-inch difference. So when I saw us in pictures sort of next to each other, I was just like, whoa, all right, I actually, stacking up pretty well. I look, like not too much smaller than him, but like next to him, like that small difference, to me, it was just like, fuck, this guy's huge. It's like, I don't know what it is, but like, when you're looking at someone who's taller than you, especially when you're used to being as tall or taller than other people, like it's a noticeable difference, like you see. And so he's just a big dude. So
yeah, I agree. I remember just getting up to him, and it's weird. I mean, I just saw him under a spotlight in the stadium sort of thing. I just saw like the shadow going around his biceps and his arms and his legs. I was like, bloody like I thought I saw like a bodybuilder back there. It's quite bad, quite bad. Yeah. Anyway, I've got one question. If do we have much time left at all? I don't want to interfere with
Yeah,
your sleep or anything.
no, it's all good.
Okay. Well, I've got a loved one that I'm quite concerned about right now,
Hmm.
and they're going through quite a tricky time, and I'm trying to basically propose them to be more carnivore, more animal based, things like that.
Mhm.
Is there any kind of ideas that you have for them based on that information? So, how would you support mental health, alleviate depression, anxiety, and like how does a diet help that?
Well, I mean, it's sort of apropos to the last question. It comes down to the mitochondria. It appears that
Mm.
when you make your mitochondria more healthy, your body becomes more healthy, but your brain becomes more healthy as well, and that's very important for mental health. The mitochondria are really what run your cells, um, and people think everything's from the DNA. And that's because when we discovered the DNA, everyone was just like, oh, this is it. This explains everything. DNA is everything. That's a code for everything. That's a code of life. That's everything. Without realizing that, yes, that's the code, but who's the programmer? Who's the people taking that information and doing something with it, right? So I think of the DNA as the blueprints and the mitochondria as the architects. They're the ones using the blueprints to go and build and make. And they're also the construction workers. They're also the workers. They're going around. They move around the inside of your cell, and they go to this organelle and this part of the thing, and they release ATP in order to trigger a response because they want this thing to do its job. And so here's this energy. You go do your thing and kick it off. And they just bouncing around, just flicking around, turning things on and off, and using energy and ATP to do that. And so when you have these older cells are broken down, they're not making as much energy, or they're not making it as fast, or they're not moving as quickly. The saying goes, day late and a dollar short. It's just it's not going to work, right? Now you have hundreds to thousands to sometimes hundreds of thousands of mitochondria in each cell. And so you certainly have, hundreds or thousands in your neurons, and you have hundreds of billions of neurons to trillions of neurons, right? So this compounds very, very quickly. Those just little delay, not quite enough energy, not quite enough ATP going, not quite enough of this neurotransmitter going, and the neurotransmitter is going a little late, and it's turning things off a little late, turning things on a little late, or too fast sometimes. Sometimes that can be a thing because you can be more excitatory because you're not inhibiting things, because it wants to inhibit some things and it doesn't slow it down. But basically it's just getting mixed signals. And so when you're doing that trillions of times over, there's problems. And what Professor Chris Palmer from Harvard has been doing, he's a professor of psychiatry at Harvard, and he's been curing people with even schizophrenia, major depression, OCD, bipolar, schizoaffective disorder, OCD, I think I already said, anxiety, major depression, I'm repeating myself, but I don't want to miss anything. And even ADHD, autism, things like that. He's really dramatically improving people's health, mental health through this, and their physical health as well. And you can do that with a ketogenic diet. You can do that with a carnivore diet. He even did carnivore for a while. And I think he's just mostly like high animal, based keto now. But yet at one point he was doing carnivore, which is a ketogenic diet, unless you're sort of eating fruit and honey and things like that, which I don't think is a great idea. So when I say carnivore, I mean the ketogenic version of carnivore. And so by doing that, you will allow your body to recycle your mitochondria, make more mitochondria, and make them work better. And if your mitochondria are working better, your cells are working better, and your neurons are cells. And so that's a big deal. So there was a study that looked at ketogenic diets and mitochondria, and they found that after 3 or so months on a carnivore or a ketogenic diet, carnivore diet, whatever, that people had 4 times the number of mitochondria in their cells, and they were 4 times as effective, right? So there's this massive compounding of benefit that you get, right? So you have 4 times as many mitochondria, and they're all 4 times as effective. So they're working better, and you have more of them to do the job. So that has been shown clinically tested with human trials to significantly improve mental health and serious mental health disorders that people thought were just unexplainable, uncurable. Only medications can help. The medications are not as helpful as we would hope they would be. They can. I mean, Jesus, they've saved many people's lives, but there's only about 10% of people who get really good effects from these medications. Only about 10%, and another 10, 20, 30% of people that get partial results, and there's about 50% of people who really don't get much benefit at all. And so it's really not a great treatment. Just dietary changes and improving your metabolic health, your mitochondrial health by other means, such as weightlifting and getting outside in the sun and doing all these sorts of natural things, have been shown clinically to be much, much more effective than medication without all the side effects.
That's great advice. Yeah, I think completely the same. Just sometimes it takes a bit of a doctor to sort of, the authority kind of stance, so it definitely helps. I've noticed that myself. I came from a background of horrendous mental health and chronic fatigue as well. And the mental health side of it did clear very quickly, to be fair, on the carnivore diet. The fatigue, though, is taking some time. But saying that, I've had spine fusion surgery, all these other things. So
yeah, a few things.
The thing is, I'm a happy guy. I'm much rather be happy than fully able, I think. So yeah, I mean, the last time we spoke, Dr. Chaffee, was like 5-6 months ago, and since then I've made leaps and bounds in my own personal journey. So I'm grateful for the advice of you and other people as well. It's definitely been tremendous help.
Well, you're very welcome, and that's great to hear. And that's the thing we were talking about. It just gets better and better as you go. Your body still improves, your health keeps improving, and I still feel better and better as I go. It's been great. I sort of wonder, the magic isn't as dazzling now because it was just such a stark contrast on what, how I felt before. And then after I went carnivore again, I'm like, oh my God, why haven't I been doing this my whole life? And now I'm just used to it. That's just my life. I just always feel awesome. And I'm like, oh, great. This is great. I sort of wonder, I was like, well, I don't want to take this for granted, but I have not lost sight of how good I feel. And maybe I don't, see that stark contrast about how bad I used to feel. But no, but it is really good, and I keep feeling better and better. And I just, I'm just really happy that you're getting more and more beneficial results. But I'm sure that'll just keep going. What, if you don't mind me asking, like, what sort of things changed? Like, what has been going on since I saw you last?
Yeah, so since last time, I've been more attentive with my YouTube channel. I've had some portions of good luck in a way, and that's motivated me to sort of try a bit harder, because I was a very sort of bitter, pessimistic person, but I'm not like that anymore.
Good.
I'm really not. And people notice this around me, so it's amazing, honestly. And you just kind of said about how the stark contrast is less evident now because it's been so long, kind of thing. And we had a question from Andrew Taylor, which was, did you have any iron toxicity or perhaps any other toxicity when you went full carnivore? Before the oxalate thing was coming about, did you notice anything with your body, like your skin, detox symptoms, iron toxicity maybe?
No, for me, it was just all aces. I just felt amazing. It was sort of after, I just started feeling better and better, from day one. As soon as I started eating a lot more meat, and it was just like skipped all the nasty ass plants and things like that. Instantly, I was just loving every meal that I ate. I was finally satiated. I was finally feeling like I was getting proper food, and my body felt good that way. My workouts were just getting better and better and better, and I just felt a lot better. And then it was sort of after 2 weeks that I noticed that it was just such a huge contrast from where I was before, that I felt just absolutely amazing. And, and that's when that's when I did that, I started noticing that I just wasn't getting sore, and I was like, oh, that's really weird. And then I did that big crazy workout where I did 32 sets of squats, or heavy legs anyway, with 20 sets of heavy squats at the end, to failure. And I just did that for like 4 hours. I'm just going to see if I can wear my legs out and just see if that makes me sore, because I couldn't wear my legs out before, or I didn't wear my legs out before. So maybe that's why I wasn't sore. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to go until I'm done and I can't do it anymore. And then I'll see. I couldn't get to the point where I was done. And so I ended up capping it at 32, just because I was like, well, that's enough. I'm not just going to
That'll
do
do the
this
job,
the
I
rest
think.
of the night. Yeah. And because I was like, I really just felt my body. I was just like, I could literally just keep doing this the rest of the night. As long as I gave myself a few minutes rest and recovery, I could just go and do the exact same amount over and over and over again. And so I was like, that's enough for this. And the next day I was actually quite worried, because I've really overdone it on leg workouts before. Nothing close to that, but like a good 12, 15 sets of super heavy legs. Even in the middle of rugby season, when I was like in really good shape and my legs were really strong, still I could just cripple me. I was in so much pain and just hobbling and couldn't walk for 2 weeks. I mean, I was just done. This was before I went carnivore the first time, when I was like 19, 20, just turned 20. And so I had been worried about that. And I was like, oh God, I'm going to be crippled. This is going to suck. And the next day I was fine. It was like I'd done nothing. And I was like walking upstairs. I was just like, okay, that's weird. It's like I'd done nothing. And I was like, okay, I'm taking 2 steps at a time. I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess I can feel something. My hamstrings are, sort of said that something's been done yesterday, but I could easily do it again. There wasn't any soreness or stiffness. So I'm like, all right. I was going to go hiking, went hiking with a friend, went up this horrible mountain called Mount Si. It's just terrible. It's switchbacks the whole way up, but it was fine. I actually had a fine time with it. And, did that. It was like a 3-hour hike. It was just huge thing. And then after that, I was just like, right, I feel good. I'm going to play some rugby. And I went to practice that night, and so, and that was after 2 weeks. I felt that much better, where I'd only been back from Bangladesh for like a month. And I just felt so much better. And, my health was just through the roof, and my physical form was so much better. And I just kept getting better after that, just kept getting better and better and better. And so thankfully I didn't experience, any oxalate dumping or any toxicity, dumping, or I certainly didn't get any iron overload. That's something I don't really see in clinic. And, some people's ferritin will go up. But ferritin can go up and down for different reasons. Ferritin is an acute phase reactant, and it can respond to inflammation or different stimulus, depending on how much you're working out and different things that you're doing. It can raise or lower your ferritin. So that's not really what you want to look at if you're worried about iron overload. And I really haven't seen people get iron overload on just a meat and water diet.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've only heard of it maybe twice. People with those genetic conditions, they've had to like have their blood drawn and things like that. But it seems quite rare to me personally. My iron's in a normal range as well. It's funny you're saying about like athleticism and stuff. So we had Tilly's sports day yesterday, and she's now 6 years old. And there was enough time this year to do like a parents' race. So you can imagine me, like a sort of stocky 6'1" guy. I was like, go on, I'll give it a go. Bear in mind, it's something I'm not really meant to be doing right now because my hip's not in great stead. Just do it. It's I'm competitive by nature, so for me not doing it would have been I'd look back in time and regretted not doing it. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because people always make this argument about needing carbs for either long distance or short distance. And I was like, I'm going to prove this wrong. So I demolished the race, and obviously I won. But yeah, so it's just a short, like 50 yard dash sort of thing. Then people will still make arguments against it and say, oh, it doesn't count, or this over there. Oh, you need to do carbohydrates and things like that. I mean, you've obviously spoken to lots of different people now from different angles. Have you met people that are militant about the carbohydrates, especially for the more explosive sports at all?
It's certainly still in people's lexicon, especially when they're playing sports or like sport trainers and things like that. They're really nervous about that. Now I've spoken to a lot of people, and I explain all this stuff to them, and some people are just like, yep, sounds good, I'll try it, and they do great. And they always do great, and their athletic performance and endurance goes way up every time. There might be a bit of a lag in that adjustment period, the sort of the fat adapting period, where they're start making enough ketones and blood sugar and glycogen, things like that, maybe they feel a bit run down, like Ryan Talbot, who's the NCAA track star, All-American decathlete, two-time All-American decathlete. He was saying that when he went carnivore, he sort of had a bit, I guess you call it keto flu or whatever, where he's felt a bit off, but he said it didn't actually impact his performance and his training. He did it mid-season, which is, pretty bold. I mean, I had no problem. I did that as well. And I felt fantastic from day one. Some people are a bit worried because, well, maybe my performance will sort of go down a bit. If you're eating enough and you're getting enough fat and you're eating to satiety, I've not really seen people struggle athletically. It's usually the people that are under eating that they sort of get a problem. But even then, people do well fasted. They fast and their athletic performance goes up. So, it's something that you can maybe, people will be a bit nervous about. I've spoken to sort of people and they're like, oh, I don't know. I don't really want to mess with things, mid-season, or, suggest that the players sort of mid-season, especially, the professionals, this is their job, and they need to keep that level of performance up or they aren't going to do well. And so I suggested to one, like, athletic director for one of the AFL teams here in Australia. He was sort of talking about that. He was sort of interested because their director of rugby went carnivore and he was Hall of Fame AFL player. And he says, I've never felt better. I just feel fantastic. This is something that we should get the team on. And so the athletic director was interested, but, cautiously interested. And so I put him in the way of, Professor Tim Noakes's work on all of this, which is, world-class sort of stuff, showing that you don't need carbs. You just flat out don't. Anyone who took biochemistry should know this, that, once you stop eating carbohydrates after 24 hours, you make all the carbohydrates that you need and you make ketones. It's great. So you do not need to eat these things. And, how many civilizations, have, never eaten carbohydrates and been, insanely athletic and hale and hearty. So, so he was a bit interested, but he was sort of like, is this something you really do mid-season? I'm like, well, look, that's obviously something to be concerned about. Doesn't have to do that. I mean, most people do fine. But I understand the concern. Maybe get your bench warmers, the guys who aren't starting, guys who aren't sort of going up, maybe see how they go. It's like, hey, you guys want to try this, see how you go. Maybe all of a sudden they're just ramping up and they start taking out the starting player spots and you go, oh, okay, all right, let's get everybody on board with this. So there's ways you could do it. There's safe ways that you could do it where, like, if you needed to transition and someone, had a bit of a lag for a week or two, well, if this guy's not even playing, and he's just practicing, who cares? That guy's got time. And so, if I was that person in that position where I was just like, well, I want a leg up on athleticism or something like that, I mean, I would jump on that. And, so, that's something that people can think about. But, the only people that really just vehemently push back are just like, just like the bro science guys on the internet and stuff like that. Oh, well, blah, 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 just say something ignorant that it's just like, well, actually, no, that's completely ridiculous. And you can say why, but most people, when you explain this stuff to them and you go through the biochemistry and how this works, I'm like, look, this is in biochemistry textbooks. That's not me. This is not my theory. This is a fact, and all animals are in a state of ketosis. They're all making their, the ones that aren't drinking nectar and honey and things like that. I have no idea what their biochemistry is like. But, herbivores and carnivores, and herbivores that eat fibrous food and carnivores that eat other animals, they're all getting fat and protein. They're not getting carbohydrates. So they're all in this so-called ketogenic state. No one is questioning their athleticism and their exercise endurance and things like that. I mean, these are just raw, wild animals that are just, ripped badasses. So, that's what we're supposed to be, and it will absolutely benefit everyone's athletic endeavors, just bar none. Like, it's just not gonna, and it's better too, because you tap into your fat stores. When you eat carbohydrates, you shut that down. Your insulin goes up. It shuts off your access to your fat stores. So that's it. You can run on your blood sugar and your glycogen. If you have enough of that to get through the end of the race or the activity or whatever you're doing, yeah, you'll be fine. But if you don't, if you're playing like a longer game, you're going to run out of glycogen and you're going to hit the wall. So you have to keep sucking down sugar and refeed and getting carbs and things like that, which you can do. But if you just don't eat carbs in the first place, you make all the carbs that you need, and as fast as you need them. Like, this is a very, very quick process. Like, there's not like a lag. You have to like sit there and like for like 5 minutes, and then you replenish your glycogen, and then you go back out there. It's making this constantly, or you die. Like, I mean, there's just like your body is going to make this stuff for you. So yeah, there's limits to a certain extent, but like, honestly, I can tell you from my own experience, you will not be able, when you get in shape, when you're pushing yourself in shape, you will not get to the point that you're going to be able to outwork your body's ability to generate energy. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to be able to work that hard. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, well said. Professor Bart K makes the point. Your muscles will always have energy. It just might be that
Hmm.
the transition when you're working off your blood glucose versus fatty acids or adipose tissue. If you're not fat adapted, it might take a bit longer. So what you're saying is just pick one substrate and ideally pick the right one.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
that makes sense. Your body fats, you got heaps of energy, from body fat
Yeah.
on your whole body.
Yeah.
What's your glycogen going to be like? Someone my size, maybe 800 grams, something like that. That's not going to get me for well, never, God forbid, I never do a 20-mile race, but like a 20-mile race, it's not
Yeah.
going to work. I'm going to need gels and things. So yeah.
Yeah, well, and that was the thing. I think, I was talking to Richard Smith, goes by Keto Pro, and he was saying that when you carbo load and do all that sort of stuff, you have like 15,000 joules of energy and glycogen in your liver. But even for like just someone like you or I that doesn't have like a huge amount of fat stores, you're upwards of 150,000 joules of energy, in a slim person. Right. So even a slim person is going to have more than enough energy to go through any race. And you're just not going to go through all that. You're just not, And so, if you're doing some sort of like insane, like 5-day marathon, there was actually a race. It was like a 5-day, or it was just as long as you could go. But it was the circuit was like sort of like 6.6K, and you had to finish it in an hour. Under an hour. And if you finished it in 40 minutes, you could take a 20-minute rest and then do the other one. But you had to make it in under an hour in order to qualify for the next one. And you just keep going until you can't make it, or stop or give up. Right. And so the guy who won it was a guy from Western Australia who literally ran for 4 days straight. And Jesus, I mean, it's just crazy. He ended up doing, it was something like 670 or 680 kilometers straight. He just kept running and running and running and running. It was absolutely crazy. So if you do something like that, okay, yeah, maybe you need a refeed. Maybe just take some butter with you, some tallow, and just eat that down as you're going, and just give your body some energy. But if you're doing anything less than that, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, well said. We've got a question from Dark Fielder Carnivore in the chat,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite a good one.
Sure.
It's very tricky to define what you'll see. So basically, what you said about not using glucose, using fat, basically, he says if your body fat is too low, protein can't convert to glucose quick enough. Of course, from that, we'd need to identify what too low body fat is. Then also, in that instance, would you just say, okay, have a stick of butter or something as you're running?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
too
I'd
low.
take that.
I'm guessing below like
Well,
6% body fat or something for men.
Yeah, the thing is, you're talking about those kids in Africa and things like that with like the big belly and things like that. That are just in dire straits, and they've got ascites from the starvation, and they're actually catabolizing their own muscle tissue. That's a very different state, and so that's that's not what we're talking about. So as long as you have fat stores, you will run on your fat. You're not going to actually cannibalize your own muscle tissue to get into that. So you won't need that. So that is correct, but it's going to be very difficult for you to get into that unless you're like truly emaciated or doing that stupid long 690 K race. You will still have fat stores available. Like even people with 5-10% body fat are going to have weeks of energy available to them at just for normal functioning. And then so if you do like high level Exercise, obviously that's going to go through your stores quicker, but I mean, literally you have weeks of energy available of normal living. And so the idea that you're going to cut through that and have to revert to protein is it's unlikely. But if you do, yeah, exactly. Eat some butter, something like that. Get some tallow, swallow that down, and I think you'd be fine. It was just super chat from JDAP Design. Thank you for that. There's no question with it, but it's just a super chat. So thank you for that. That's kind of you.
Yeah, very kind. I'm glad people are donating to a cause. Like having a YouTube channel probably does cost money as well, doesn't it, Dr. Chaffee? All the things you have to buy to run along it, the designing, the software, and that.
And then the time, it does take time that you're not working, you're not with your family, you're not doing other things and furthering your career otherwise. But it's it is something that is important to do, and so I really do appreciate the super chats. I don't require it from anybody. I really do appreciate when people do it. I always try to answer everyone's questions if I can, but it is one of those things that obviously you prioritize the super chat questions because they've made the extra effort, and so you sort of have to answer those, and then you try to answer other ones, and it also makes them pop out because you see it highlighted there and there's no missing it. So that does make it easier, but it is always appreciated. It's very kind of people, but you don't have to. This is not why I'm doing this. That's not. I have a day job, and Jonathan has a day job. This is something we do because we're passionate about it and we care about it, and we just want this information out there. We want people to be able to get this information, use this information, and not need to have expensive medical therapies and consultations and things like that, and just be healthy, and get on with their life, and then get everyone to a state of basic good health, and which is the natural state of humanity, is to be healthy. Just the state of any animal is to be healthy, or else you go extinct, you die. You're not going to. It's survival of the fittest, not survival of the fattest. So we are a very fit species when we allow ourselves to be. So it's it's something that we can get back to, I think, and I think we need to. And if we do that, then we can all just get back to what we were doing and just go on doing other things, which I think would be great too.
I agree. Yeah, I'm just thinking like the amount of time the average person stresses and thinks and worries about their health and has to like pay out so much money to feel healthier, and it's like it's so bizarre. If we just ate the right diet, that would solve so many issues, I think.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, like literally trillions. The sugar companies sugar industry makes about $1.3 trillion a year, and just treating the effects of sugar is costing the healthcare system, I believe, just in America, $2.4 trillion a year. Right? That's 5% of the population of the world. Right? Jesus Christ. The tens of trillions of dollars that we're spending around the world globally eating stupid crap and then having to treat that, basically eating poison and then treating that poison. I mean, it's just insane how much we're spending, and it's wasted money. It is wasted money. It's like those make work projects back in the 1930s with FDR during the Great Depression in America. He spent millions of dollars having people dig a giant ditch and then spend another 6 weeks filling it back up. It's like, why the hell did you do that? Like that is completely, but they have to work, they have to do something, and we have to pay. You just have to have money. No. People need to work and do something productive. If it's not productive, it's wasteful. And so, Jesus Christ. So that's what this is going on here. We are causing a problem, and then we're paying for a problem, and then we're paying for a mitigation of that problem. It's not a solution because it's not fixing anything. It's just making it less bad, and it doesn't need to exist at all. And all of those trillions of dollars go right back in your pocket. You never have to spend it. No one's spending this, and then so it's not driving industry in that direction of sick care. It's driving the industry in healthcare, dealing with emergencies and accidents and things like that. And then that money goes somewhere else. And we're like, okay, well, there's no money in this. Let's have our business do something else, right? And actually do something freaking useful for once, as opposed to just poisoning people and then, selling him the antidote. It just does my head in that we're in this mess in the first place.
Yeah, it feels so much better now to be off the medications I was on. I was on Meprazole, antidepressants, all these things, and they didn't really solve anything. I look back and think, was it worth me taking these things? And I almost wish I've been carnivore now for like nearly 3.5 years, and I was like, wish I did this from birth. Would have really solved a few problems, I think. Yeah, we had a question from the person that left a super chat. It's
Mm-hmm.
about lipo A, I'm imagining. My wife has it and wants to go carnivore. Is there a risk? Thanks.
I don't know specifically about that, but my just because I haven't come across it, but I've my general feeling is this, which is that regardless of the genetic individualities of each different person, they're still human, and so they still biologically are going to have an optimal diet that is human, the same human diet, and so I still think that that's a carnivore diet. So maybe their bodies work a bit differently, in certain ways, and maybe they can't metabolize things just as well as other people, and that can make some logistical issues down the track. But I still think that optimal for one human is going to be optimal for another human, and so I still think that would be beneficial for her. Maybe she just has to address how she eats fat, how much she eats, and how she goes about that. But I think that's a practical issue that she can just test by trial and error and see how she goes. But at the end of the day, she's human, and humans are supposed to eat meat. And this, I don't know how long that, you can, sometimes you can trace back like when that gene sort of popped up in the population, and you can sort of see like, where that is. It's like, oh, okay, this happened about 20,000 years ago. Okay, well, that's fine. We were in the ice age 20,000 years ago, and we were eating mammoths. So, obviously it's not that big of a deal if it survived an ice age. So that's something you can think about as well, sort of when that thing popped up. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. But it doesn't matter what your specific genetic abnormalities are or idiosyncrasies are, you're still human, and humans are designed to eat meat.
Yeah, it would make sense we've got to this point just by the off chance we've, nature's very clever, isn't it, really, Dr. Chaffee? It's not going to make mistakes, I don't think. It's funny we've got to this point and somehow these sort of things crop up, and I wonder how much of it is like epigenetics versus diet versus something else. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Right. I think we had one point about basically what can we do to spread awareness of the carnivore diet with whatever capacities we have. So I remember the first time I spoke to you, you had something like 60 odd thousand subscribers. Now you've more than doubled it. So you've reached more than, 2 times more people.
Yeah,
And
which
it's a
is nice.
significant amount.
Yeah.
Helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, well, it's not, well, it's just nice that people are more people are becoming aware of this and looking into it and becoming interested in it, and looking at all the other people that are succeeding with it as well. It was sort of nice. You mentioned people going on the 60 Minutes thing and saying, hey, hold on a second, carnivore shouldn't be lumped in like that. Carnivore saved my life. It's done all these sorts of things for me. That's great. And people see that and they go like, okay, well, look, I have those same problems this person has. And, I can, and if it works for them, maybe it can work for me, and then give it a try. And that's what a lot of people are doing. They're seeing the comments. They're seeing people discussing, a video on autoimmune issues or something like that. You have the discussion on the video, but then there are these discussions going on in the comments, and people talking about their autoimmune issues and how they were benefited by that. And other people see that and go like, I have that. Someone talking about how it, put their MS into remission, and it's like, hey, I have MS. What did you experience? What did you see? And other people go like, yeah, it worked for me. It worked for me. It worked for me. It worked for me. And that can be very powerful for people, because nothing's supposed to do that. Nothing is supposed to be able to put MS into remission. Besides heavy medications that are very detrimental to your health. That was actually one thing, I was thinking as well with JDAP for his question. there are a lot of resources around in the carnivore community. There are a couple Facebook groups that have been around for 20 years or so, such as Zero Carb Health and Zeroing In on Health. So I would recommend joining those groups and going in there, because they have search functions. First of all, you can just ask the question, hey, my wife has this. Does anybody else have this? Has anybody else experienced a carnivore diet with this condition? And what did you see? What did you find? There might be people that answer you there. There probably will be, but a big thing is that basically every question under the sun has been asked in that group. So you just go to the search function and you just search for a couple key terms like that, and you will see thread after thread after thread of someone exactly asking that exact same question and the discussions that have happened. And if you don't find something in there, then you ask a question and you'll get answers, and it may be that, it's rare enough that not that many people have tried it, but most people will find answers to their questions. And that's something that you can do. I don't, we don't have like studies on like specific on that specific disease and carnivore specifically. So unfortunately, anything we talk about is going to be anecdotal in regards to some of these things, but that can be quite powerful. You're just seeing what other people's experiences are. They have that genetic issue. They tried it. It improved things, or at least didn't harm them. They handled that very well. Great. They didn't get any negative health outcomes. Lovely. So that's reassuring. And then you try it yourself and you see if it helps. And if it helps, great. And if you're finding that it's not really helping and things are getting worse, okay, well then you adjust. You try to figure out, troubleshoot. Am I doing everything right? Am I eating enough? Am I eating the right amount of fat, the right amount of lean meat? Am I getting enough water? Are there other conditions in my life that could be affecting this as well? And what else is going on? You troubleshoot all those sorts of things and see where you're at the end of it. But most people have gone through this. There are hundreds of thousands, millions of people really around the world who have done this now and come to this now over the years. And most likely there's someone who's had that condition, and probably multiple people that have had that condition and have tried carnivore, and you can talk to them about their results. So that's what I would suggest as the best way of getting a better answer than that.
Yeah, well said. I mean, the search function, all these sort of forums and groups is very helpful. I found for myself, I was going through, I think it's like the Meat Hills website or something. So I was looking for anecdotes of autism, anecdotes of chronic fatigue, anecdotes of spine disease. I found something around that for all of those. So it's quite, if not that informative, sometimes it is very inspiring. And I thought, these people are doing it, so why not me? So,
yeah, exactly. And but that is exactly it. It's like there are enough people doing these sorts of things that have the exact same problems that we all have, and they're getting improvement. And so it's obviously worth a try to see if it works for us. And if you don't find that it's working for you and you don't like it, you can always stop. It's not going to kill you, and it will almost certainly make you better.
Yeah. What's your hard limit, by the way, Dr. Chaffee? Because we've still got loads of questions left, I think.
I can probably go 2 more questions.
Okay. We've got one here from Tony Ennis. So, hey guys, love the conversation. Can you tell me why I'm not losing weight? I'm a 6-foot male, maybe 25% body fat. I'm doing strict carnivore for the last 3 months, and I take in a lot of butter fat in addition.
Okay. Well, I mean, first and foremost, really, you have to separate weight and body fat percentage and your body composition, right? Because they're different things. And so, when I was doing this and I stopped eating vegetables and started eating more meat, I lost 23 pounds in 10 days, so 10 kilos in 10 days. But then I didn't lose anything. I stayed the exact same weight for months and months and months and months and months. I didn't lose any weight, but my body composition changed. I mean, just before my eyes. I was working out a lot. I was lifting weights a lot. I started back playing rugby, and so I was replacing the fat I was losing with muscle. And so my weight didn't change, but my body absolutely changed. My body composition changed dramatically, and so that's something you have to look at. So if you're not losing fat, okay, there can be other reasons for that. On it for 3 months, it's early days. Probably, most people lose some weight early on, especially water weight and a bit of fat and things like that. There are some people that have been doing yo-yo dieting and starving themselves, and or eating vegan sort of things, and their bodies have just been sort of in a state where they've thought that they're in a famine, and your body doesn't know the difference between you just trying to diet and a famine. It just knows we're not getting the nutrients we need. Shut down your metabolism, slow everything down. Your body's very fiscally responsible. If you get your hours cut at work and you're making 25% less than you were before, the right thing to do is cut your expenses and costs and your output by 25% as well. Most of us don't do that. Most people go into debt and like, go into credit card debt. Bad idea. Your body doesn't do that. Your body just shuts it down. Right. And so you'll find that when you've done that, your metabolism slows down, the output goes down, and it can take a while for that to ramp back up. And you just need to eat enough. You need to eat enough. Sounds like you're definitely eating enough fat. You don't have to just eat a whole bunch of butter, though. You should really be getting the fat that you need from the meat. If you're eating really, really lean meat, melting some butter into a steak is not that big of a deal. I don't think that you need to just eat a ton of butter. I think that you should just eat a ton of meat, really. And there should be fat with that meat. It should be fatty meat and maybe butter on the meat. But either way, look at body composition, not weight ever. But really what you need to be focusing on is your health. How do you feel? How's your energy? How's your mental state? Any medical issues or anything like that have been improved? Your athletic endurance that has improved. If you're working out, you're definitely going to be putting on muscle. If you're not losing weight, you're definitely losing fat, because you would be gaining weight if you were gaining muscle and you weren't losing fat, right? And so I would look at that. So focus on your health first and foremost. Focus on how you feel and your well-being. That's the most important thing. Even if you never lost an ounce of fat, that is always going to be worth it, because you're going to be in better health. Then, very distant second, body composition. Are you losing fat and just staying the weight because you're putting on muscle, right? Never at any point does weight make it on the list, because it's not important. It's body composition, right? And so if you're not losing fat, you need to think about it a few ways. Are you eating enough? Are you eating to satiety? Are you eating exactly what you're supposed to eat? Are you just eating meat, only drinking water? Are you still drinking coffee? Are you having artificial sweeteners? Are you having some stevia or monk fruit sugar or something like that? Are you, getting proper sleep? Are you stressed out? All these sorts of things can affect your cortisol and your ability to, stimulate fat loss and things like that. And, and if you're doing everything right and everything's perfect, but you're really just not losing fat, it's most likely that you have slammed down your metabolism from years of eating, the wrong thing and dieting and fasting and trying to starve yourself. And it's just going to take time to ramp back up, and your hormones are probably going to be way out of whack. Your leptin is probably going to be very elevated in that circumstance, and that takes time. It does come down, and your weight will come down, and and so you'll just reduce that, and that will start to come down, and eventually those hormones will get into balance. Your metabolism will slowly ramp up, especially if you're working out, especially if you're lifting weights, especially if you're eating as much as you feel comfortable eating. And eventually that fat will just start pouring off of you. It's very rare that people really don't lose any fat at all, but it happens. But it's because of those reasons. But those they get themselves sorted out, and so eventually it'll come right. So focus on your health, focus on how you feel, and the rest will just happen on its own. And lift weights, sprint, and be happy.
Yeah, I like that. You've pretty much detailed everything I would. Without giving a consultation, I don't really think you could really figure out what it was. That's as well. You mentioned the point about body composition. I'm the composition consultant.
Yeah.
I'm not the weight consultant. So we're always dealing with muscle gain, fat loss, that sort of thing. But if you're really stuck, honestly, come on my channel, look at my content, book a consultation. You don't have to buy anything, but to give you a proper sort of idea of what you should be doing, I'd advise that very much.
Yeah, and that's the thing. consults can sometimes you'll go through like all those I'm just sort of speaking in generalities. These are some of the things that people run into, or they're eating a lot of dairy. That's a big one that really slows people down. Yeah, and thank you very much for the super chat, Tony. That's really really nice of you. Thank you. But yeah, that's a big one. A lot of people stall because they're eating just way too much dairy and way too much cheese and things like that. I do see that a lot, and they'll stall their fat loss. And so something to think about. Really want to get down to bare bones, just eating just meat and water. That's it, and eat to satiety. You don't necessarily need to eat a ton of butter, but having some butter every now and then is fine.
Yeah, but ask what my channel is, guys. It's just Composition Consultant. Just type it in, I come up. You'll see my logo as well. We've got something about mouth taping.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's really good. I just saw that as well. Mouth taping is a really good idea. There have been a ton of studies showing this, that people that are sort of more mouth breathers, it actually changes the structure of your face and like the tubes and things like that. And it actually has health ramifications as well. And kids will have this mouth breathing as a kid, and it'll change the shape of their face. They're called an adenoid face, and their cheekbones are sort of sunken and flattened in. Their face elongates, and they have this like just weird look to their face. Then you tape their mouth. You encourage nasal breathing during the day, and you tape their mouth at night. And it actually changes the physical structures of their brain, and they become more attractive. They become more classically attractive. And having, now what I mean by that is that they have the proportionalities to their features, that when you get these things, these golden ratios of all these, exactly this space between here and your eyes, and this in your nose, and the upper lip and your nose and your chin, and all these sorts of things. These are these ratios that, for whatever reason, we look at that and say that is attractive. And that's what people generally think of as attractive. When we get these averages, when you had a whole bunch of people, you average all their faces, they get these average faces. Those are the ones people saying those are the most attractive people ever. It's like, that's like the hottest thing I've ever seen in my life. And so those averages, so it has this proportionality, and there's just these perfect ratios between their features. And when you go to mouth taping, you go to nasal breathing, you get that. And so children's faces actually change, and there's different sorts of things that are actually suggesting that adults' faces can actually change as well. I have a problem with that because I've broken my nose so many damn times it doesn't work, and so it's very difficult for me to breathe through my stupid nose. And there was 6 months of my life in my late teens, early 20s, where I was early 20s, that I could not breathe through my nose. I could not do it. I dumped Afrin in both nostrils and sort of tried to get something through. I was straining as hard as I could. Really couldn't get any air through, and I dump all this Afrin in there. All of a sudden, I could breathe, and then so I'd get through a rugby game like that, and then after that, it would lock down. It would have sort of a rebounding effect, where it locked down so tight it would just be painful. I'd just get these like pressure headaches because it was so locked down. Absolutely terrible for 6 months, and then I was able to get surgery, and and yeah, and and so that was awful. But no, it's actually really healthy. It's a really good thing to do, and especially for kids, but even adults, it's just very beneficial in a lot of ways. Surprisingly, a surprising amount. I mean, it like generates more like like nitric oxide and things like that. I mean, it's like it actually has physiological benefits to everyone just breathing through your nose, which is crazy. So yeah, no, I think that's a great idea for people to tape their mouths if they feel their nose breathing at night, and for kids especially, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, just my anecdote about diet and like facial shape. So Maddie, she's about 14 months old now. She's well ahead of her peers in terms of like her abilities. She also got how do I explain it? Like a proper shaped jaw. Like a human jaw, not like an alien kind of balloon head, like a proper jaw. And you think, well, that's all the meat we've been given her.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And that's going to transfer to the rest of her life. She'll have a appropriate jaw shape for, the goal of eating proper food. So,
yeah, definitely. Well, cool.
That's a lot, I think.
Probably run. Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, thanks everyone for coming on. I know it's a different time than I normally do, but hopefully that was you know, different people that in different areas of the world were able to join that. So that's sort of good too, because normally, yeah, you can't make it possible for everybody all over the world to make it into these, unfortunately.
Yeah, me and Dr. Chaffee, me and Bart Kate, the hardest people to speak to because it means one of us is early, one of us is
Mm.
late every time. So yeah, I appreciate you
Yeah,
taking your time out from your bedtime and that sort of thing.
yeah.
Did you want to plug anything as well for people on my channel and vice versa? So I know you do a book club and groups and things like that, maybe.
Oh yeah, well, for people who don't know, my Instagram is just Anthony Chaffee MD, and my YouTube channel is Anthony Chaffee MD, and I have a Patreon, Anthony Chaffee MD, and we have like a book club for Patreon members that we do every month, and we read various books, like Sally Norton's Toxic Superfoods, Jane Buxton's. Um, The Great Plant Based Con, which is excellent. And we just got finished reading Malcolm Kendrick's, Dr. Malcolm Kendrick's book, The Clot Thickens, basically arguing that heart disease has nothing to do with cholesterol. It's just really like a clotting issue and causing damage and all that sort of stuff. So, and then this month we're reading Professor Ben Bickman's book, Why We Get Sick. And so we're lucky enough to be able to get the authors on to discuss, at the end once we finish the book and sort of tell them what we thought about the book and ask questions directly of the authors, which is pretty amazing. But it's nice, it's nice that I have this platform and I'm able to sort of get in touch with those people and bring them on. And Olivia, who helps me with my Patreon stuff, she's one of the board members for PHC, Public Health Collaboration, and so she has ties to a lot of these people as well. So she's been, and she runs the book club as well, and so she is able to get a lot of these guys on too that I'm not in contact with. So it's been, I think it's been very positive for people, and it's certainly been positive for me. I've really enjoyed them as well, and yeah, and so if people want to see more of my videos, just go to Anthony Chaffee MD on YouTube. I have a playlist for people getting started, just called Carnivore Essentials, and you can sort of go through there. I think I've sort of curated a list of videos that I think there are a pretty good place for people to start, and then they can sort of move on from there.
Yeah, that's very helpful. It's good to have a starting point, I think. Excellent. My stuff, well, I'm the competition consultant. My name's Jonathan, obviously. That's my logo, which you can find online. My channel is competition consultant. Same with Instagram. Quite easy to get hold of. I offer consultations, diet and training plans, and coaching plans as well. I try to make it affordable for people, and I don't like seeing people very unwell. So I'm a bit like Dr. Chaffee in that case, but I specialise in body composition specifically. I'm not a doctor. I can't really interpret your blood test results that well, but I will be able to get you in better shape if you follow the plan and do the proper diet. That's basically it, really. Excellent.
Right.
All right, cheers, guys. Take care. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Jonathan. Good to see you.
And you, cheers.